Hello everyone, Kalla here, and welcome to this video, in which I'm going to go over a very short trip I took to Bilbao in northern Spain, or indeed equally in the Basque Country. I'm going to do this a little bit differently to how I did my last trip video, in that I'm not just going to go over in order what I did. I think I'll just put it into little sections, because I think that might be more useful, particularly because it was a relatively short trip. First up, I was travelling this time with 3 of my friends, and for the sake of this video, we will call them A, B, and C. And I should probably note with this that this was a trip taken while my ankle/foot was not being my friend, so I got done less than I really ideally wanted. An injured foot does make it rather difficult to wander around a city and see all the things that you ideally want to see, so I did end up missing out on some things. Now, I'd like to start this off by discussing transport, because how else do you get to and around an area, right? In order to get to Bilbao, we flew from London Gatwick to Bilbao Airport. Getting to Gatwick Airport in the first place, we took the train. It's fairly easy to catch the train to Gatwick Airport from London Victoria, either by the Gatwick Express or by the slower stopping trains going to Brighton. And for this we travelled with the airline Vueling, mostly because that was basically the only option. Some quick thoughts, I think, on Vueling. Their hand luggage allowance, if you're not spending additional money, is really small. Like, if I was travelling for more than just the quick weekend trip that I was doing, I don't think I would have had enough luggage space. Particularly, this also meant that I couldn't really do that much shopping while I was there, because obviously it all had to fit in a bag to fit these dimensions. I actually ended up sewing my own bag to almost these exact dimensions, slightly smaller, just so I didn't have to worry about it. I will also say the regular seats, there was not a whole lot of legroom. I'm 5'7", and there was just enough legroom for me. I think anyone with longer legs might not enjoy it. They do have a few areas of the plane that do have more legroom, but obviously they're an upcharge. One thing I really did like about this airline was their disembarkation process. They would do it 5 rows at a time, which I think is great, honestly, because I kind of hate how when a plane lands and stops at the gate, everyone just seems to get up and start grabbing all their things, and it's usually a mess. So an orderly exit like this I really liked. When we arrived at Bilbao, they were exiting from both the front of the plane and the back, so it was even faster for us, because we were kind of near the back of the plane. At Bilbao, this was also a parked on the tarmac, use the buses to get to the terminal sort of deal, which I guess is why they could put stairs at the front and back. When we got back to Gatwick, it was just connected to the walkway, so they were only exiting from the front, which did mean that we had to wait quite a while being sat at the back, but no, I think I still like it more than the scrum. Speaking of airports, in order to get into Bilbao itself from the airport, you've got basically 2 options. There is the airport bus, which is the option we took because that's the cheapest option, And then there's also taxis. Both of these are located in the same area. Once you get to arrivals, it basically puts you straight out to there. You'll see the taxis outside the window on the floor you're on. The bus stop is, if you look at the windows, go all the way to the right, and the bus stop is just outside there. Although you'll need to get a ticket for it from a kiosk that's just inside the airport at that same point. It's €3 per adult to take the airport bus, and that is for either direction. And it takes about 20 minutes or so. It really depends on where you want to get off the bus at the other end. Which I do recommend looking up the route and where all the stops are for the bus, because obviously there might be one that is closer to where you're staying than if you say go all the way to the end. On the way back, we caught the airport bus from a point about halfway or so on its route, which meant that the first bus we saw was incredibly full, so we didn't get on that one, we waited for the next one, but they're relatively frequent, so as long as you're not in a rush, this obviously works well. And I'm never in a massive rush to the airport if I can help it, because I really like getting there way early. I'd also like to say about the plane, when we booked our tickets, it did say we could pay extra then to choose our seats, or we could wait until 7 days before departure and it would just be assigned for us for free. We did, all four of us, get sat together. Obviously this might not be the same for everyone, but none of us got split up. I mean, 3 of us were on one side of the aisle and the 4th member was on the seat on the other side of the aisle from us. Now, as for public transport within Bilbao itself, there are various types. There's the metro, which is mainly what we used at the weekend. There is also buses and trams, but I didn't use either of them, so I can't really talk about them. And obviously aside from the airport bus, but that's a different matter. Transport tickets are very reasonable in price. It basically just depends on how many zones you're going across. So it ranges from €1.70 if you're staying within the same zone, or it was €1.90 to go over into the next zone. And obviously it increases a bit further out, but Zone 2 was the furthest we went. There are 3 metro lines, line 1, 2 and 3. Lines 1 and 2 are probably what you're most likely to be using if you're staying within the centre of Bilbao, and they run in the same area through the entirety of Zone 1, and then they split going out into line 2, one on either side of the river. And yes, Bilbao is in a river valley, which means that a lot of the city is on the sides of hills. The other piece of public transport that exists is a couple of funiculars. There's one on either side of the river, I believe. We did take a trip up the funicular on the northern side of the city so that we could see the view, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of it because I'm pretty sure I am absolutely going to butcher it, because I have basically no ability in Spanish or Basque. It was €4.30 for a round trip on the funicular, or it would have been €2.50 one way. I'll detail information about the funicular later when I'm going over the various sites that we visited and things that we saw. Ditto, I will talk about the Vizcaya Bridge, which is also both public transport and a tourist thing. Tickets for the metro, at least, are very, very easy to obtain. There are ticket machines at every metro station, and you can turn the ticket machine to English, and you basically just select the stop that you're going to, and it'll just tell you how much the fare is to there. You can buy multiple tickets at one time, which is obviously useful if you're travelling with multiple people. And the machines, some of them only take card, and some take card and cash. A slightly odd thing I noticed about the card payments on these machines is that despite using contactless payment, I did get asked to input my PIN, which I don't think I've ever been asked to do that before. It was very confusing because I was like, I booped the card. Why is nothing happening? And then I look at the PIN pad and it's like, oh, okay. You want my PIN for a contactless purchase? Another thing you need to remember if you're using the metro in Bilbao is you need to know which exit of the metro station that you need to use. Because every metro station will have a number of exits, and depending on the way you want to get out of the platform area via a different route. Because if you head through the barriers on one side, then you're kind of stuck to the exits that are on that side. And that might not be the direction in which you want to go. The various entrances to the metro can be quite a distance apart. If you're going to a station that is uphill, you may, like we did, accidentally end up using a metro exit that is a lot further downhill than your destination, meaning that you then have to climb the hill again. As I've said before, steps and hills and things don't agree with me too much, and they really don't agree with me when my foot is injured. Outside the metro exits, you will find a map of the other entrances/exits to that metro station, which is useful for if you're using that metro station again, but I don't know if these maps existed inside the metro or not, and I would hope that they did, but I didn't see any. Aside from just buying tickets at the machines for the metro, and obviously this counts for the bus and the tram too, but I don't know as much about how those work. There is a travel card that you can buy, called the Barrack card, which is a bit like the London Oyster card, if you've used that. You load money onto it and then you just tap it on the gates and it pays for the trips. Your trips will be slightly less expensive using this, but for my trip I didn't pick one of these up because there is an upfront charge for the card, and I didn't think that in the amount of time that we were there we would use it enough to justify that and to make it actually cheaper for us. But if you're there for more than a weekend, then this is probably good for you. I'm afraid I don't know where you buy them. Equally, Bilbao does have tourist cards that are valid for various amounts of time, but also I didn't think we would be using the transport often enough to justify the cost of those either, even on our main exploration day. The cards do also get you some other benefits, so maybe look it up and see if that's worth it for you. Another thing I'd like to say about the metro is on L1 and L2 there will be a handy diagram of the metro with lights that will light up along the route as you get to different stations, and the next station on the route will be a flashing light, and there will be a light towards the end that is switched on, which is where the metro that you're on terminates. So if you're ever unsure if you're on the right metro, you can just use that. On L3 they had the, in my opinion, slightly less useful scrolling text dot matrix screens. What the stations on L3 did have was areas marked out on the floor on the platform to show where the various doors were going to come to rest, where it does tell you to stay out of the way and basically stand in a particular place for getting on and keep the area for people getting off clear, which I thought was quite cool. Now, accommodation-wise, we stayed in an Airbnb this time, so I'm not really going to talk about that much. I will say it was nice. It was fairly well situated near a metro station, but I wish I'd looked into where the metro entrances were, because there was one right round the corner that we didn't find until relatively late on in our trip. Now I'd like to go in a little bit to the various public facilities, shall we say, in Bilbao, by which I don't just mean toilets, but I am going to talk about public toilets, because I feel that's kind of a useful thing to know about. Now, the metro stations do not have public toilets. The more mainline rail stations do, although whether or not you can access them without a ticket is dependent on the station. Concordia train station, the only toilets I could find were beyond the barriers, but at Bando station I was able to find public facilities that were accessible without a train ticket. The other place in which I found public toilets was in this shopping centre here. Now, also, I may have mentioned before that a lot of Bilbao is on a slope. And for some people that can be not great. Those people do in fact include me. Imagine my great positive surprise to find that they've actually accounted for this. Like, in various places in the city you'll find public elevators that will take you up places that would ordinarily involve a lot of steps, and also moving walkways that go up hills. Like, the last time I saw a moving walkway that went up a hill and was just out there in all weathers was actually in Portugal several years back, so hey, maybe it's an Iberian Peninsula thing, but I think it's great. It certainly made my time in the city easier. Now, I didn't see much in the way of water fountains in the same way as like you'd see in Paris or Rome, which may be an important note to make. Like, maybe I missed them. And now with all that general informational part out of the way, I'll give you a rundown of the various sites I went to see. So I feel like I should probably start with one of the obvious ones. Bilbao is home to a large art museum called the Guggenheim. Now, I didn't actually go in there because art museums aren't really my jam, but I did go and look outside of it because this giant puppy covered in flowers, whose name is literally Puppy, was quite adorable, and I enjoyed seeing it. There are a few pieces of art like this around outside of the museum that you don't need to pay entry to the museum in order to see. The other main famous one is called Mama, and is basically a giant spider sort of thing, which we didn't go and see because C is severely arachnophobic. So we did our best to stay away from that one. But if you want to see her, she should be about here on the map. Now, being a city that spans a river, there are a lot of bridges with which you can cross them. But the more interesting bridge we went to see was this transporter bridge, which I think is extremely cool. Like, just look at this architecture. Like, this was so interesting and that I really wanted to go on it. It is an extremely smooth ride. Like, I don't know if maybe it sways a bit more if it's windier, but it was fairly windy the day we went, and I I didn't really notice. In order to cross this, you have to buy your tickets from the machine that is outside. And I should admit that we needed help to use this machine because we couldn't figure it out on our own. So thank you very much to the kind local who basically walked us through it. So I can't really give you a good tip on this. I'm not quite sure how he got it back into pedestrians from where it seemed to be stuck on cars for us. It's really quite cheap as a pedestrian to use this bridge. It's only 50 euro cents per person. And that's not a lot for a pretty cool experience. In order to get there, we took the metro up to Arita in Zone 2. And then once we'd got off on the other side, we took the metro back again from Portugalete. The bridge was quite well signposted from Arita and a relatively short walk. We also had plans to go and take a walk around the old town, although my foot was not cooperating. So we didn't get very far before I needed to take a seat, and my friends had a little look around this market and this square here before we then went to do something else. We did intend to come back and look at it again on a later day, but also my foot was not behaving, so one of my friends went to go look at that solo. I do hear it's very pretty, and if I get the chance to go again, I would like to have a walk around there. The other main touristy thing that we did was to take the funicular up to go see the city from above, and we took this funicular, whose name I'm not going to try and pronounce. A round trip to go up and back down is €4.30. If you only want to go one way, it's €2.50. And once again, they were easy to use ticket machines at the entrance. Very simple. The entrance to the funicular is partway uphill, so you may want to use Metro line L3 to get vaguely close to it. The lower station for the funicular is fairly close to the metro stop Matico, which is at the end of L3. Now that I've listed it out, it feels like we didn't really see all that much. Although I will say we did wander quite a bit and just looking around at the city, but it's kind of difficult to pick specific things. And now I should probably discuss food, which we kind of failed a little bit at getting local food all that much. We wound up mostly buying sandwiches and pastries at supermarkets, and one night we ordered Domino's to the Airbnb. Spanish Domino's has this very nice deal on a Saturday night where you can get 3 pizzas for the price of 1. We also wound up actually physically in a Domino's on the Sunday night because apparently we left it a bit too late to get food, and just the restaurants here don't seem to be open on a Sunday night. Like, you wouldn't have any particular issue finding a bar, but finding somewhere that serves food on a Sunday night is apparently fairly difficult. I mean, it's probably easier in some areas of the city than others, but even using Google to try and find things that are open, we ended up walking up to a place and finding that it was not in fact open. So that's a thing. We did, around Sunday mid-afternoonish, obtain lunch in the form of some small plates from a bar, which is apparently quite a big thing in Bilbao. Unfortunately, I am a relatively picky eater with absolutely no ability in Spanish, so it was a case of just picking the thing that looked most like it would be edible for me. But it was very nice. And that about covers it for food. You really shouldn't watch these videos if you're wanting things about local food, because apparently I'm just really, really terrible at this. I mean, look, we tried to find a restaurant this time. We failed. But at least I tried this time. Now, I think that probably just about covers everything I could talk about for this trip. Let me know if you prefer this method of a trip report compared to what I did for Bavaria, if you've watched those as well. And if you haven't watched those and you want to watch those, there'll be a link in the description. Most of the time on this channel I do gaming content, mostly streaming. If you're interested in that, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm also on various social media which are linked in the description box below. And I hope that you've enjoyed watching this video, and I hope to see you around another time. So this is Kalla, signing out. See ya. Bye bye.